Supergirl episode 10, Childish Things. I certainly enjoyed this episode. It was a great episode for Winn, without a doubt, because we got to learn a lot about him. I knew that his father was going to end up being the toy maker because someone commented on one of my other reviews, so I was kind of looking forward to this episode. And personally, I think it turned out better than I even expected it to. We got like a really emotional a couple of emotional scenes with Winn, and I think my favorite one was definitely the first one where he was explaining the moment when he really lost his dad and how even when his dad wasn't crazy, he knew like his dad was a coward and things like that. But then he went from this cowardly guy who wouldn't even stand up for himself when his boss stole this stuff that would have made him a millionaire, but he snaps and then he kills a bunch of people because he puts a bomb in a toy and he wants to kill the guy that stole his ideas. And I thought that was a great moment for the episode. And we got some other pretty cool moments as well, just with Winn's character. There were actually a lot of amazing, just single moments in this episode for sure. We got a ton of Martian Manhunter in this, which I can't possibly hate. That was really awesome. Of course, the very end of this episode, we have it where the secret is officially out. Alex and Kara are discovered as sisters, or discovered to be sisters, by the one guy, Maxwell Lord. I completely forgot his name for a second. So he has a camera on Alex's purse, completely busted. It's just like, that's all there is to it. So they're busted. It should be fairly easy. I don't think she called her Kara, even though it shouldn't matter, but obviously the glasses confuse people. But I don't believe she said, Kara. I don't think they, said each other's names during that specific scene. So, she might still be able to do the whole human disguise thing, which shouldn't matter because he can obviously just look her up and be like, okay, Alex Danvers, she has a sister. One sister who's also blonde and the same size and everything is Supergirl. So it doesn't matter if she says her name or not. He knows exactly what's going on. And then, excuse me, we also have footage of him finding the Martian Manhunter, so seeing himself, and then like phasing through the wall and everything. I thought for sure when he talked about having like the invisible cameras or whatever, or the invisible backups, I thought he was going to have a camera directly in the room, because then he would have found out who Hank was, and I figured that would have been what kind of led him to finding out who Kara was and everything like that. But Hank is still the mystery, but he knows like the bigger secret I think is out at this point. So it should be pretty crazy. I'm not 100% sure how they're going to do this, but I like the way that it ended. It was definitely enjoyable. It was definitely a nice little twist. Everything, it's like, obviously we have our one story that wraps up, and that's Winn's story, which, like I said, I thought was very well done. They also put a nice reference in there. The toy that he got from his father, the very first one, I believe that's the costume of the toy maker, like the old costume. I believe that's what it is. If it's not the toy maker, it's some other character from the DC universe, but that's an actual character. I believe it is the old original costume for the toy maker. And like I said, if not, it's someone else. I remember that. It's sad, but I honestly remember that because of Robot Chicken, the DC comic special. That's why I remember, like, oh, that's a DC thing. It was because of the Robot Chicken special. But I mean, it's a super old costume. They obviously don't use it. So if you didn't know that or didn't read the comics back then you wouldn't have known that. But I thought that was a nice little reference. Like, that was pretty cool because they didn't obviously have to do that, and it was just one little scene. Like, oh, here's a puppet, and it's the original costume. So that was cool. The actor who played the father, I thought it was interesting because I used to watch the show Revenge, and he was the main character on that show. So I was like, oh, it's kind of cool to see him in this. I personally think he did it well. I think the toy maker was very creepy but very cool in this episode, and personally, I kind of like to see him back. I always thought the toy maker could be a really good character. Like, the toy maker is either really great or way too campy to be cool, and I think they did it really great in this one. I think he was very menacing. It was very devastating to Winn as a character, because it's like, his dad was constantly saying like, oh, we're the same, and you have the genius like I have it, and Winn was freaking out like, if I'm just like him, then I'm just, one day I'm gonna snap. And he talks about how he's scared to even be an angry person because he feels like he could just snap like his father, and poof, he starts killing a bunch of people. And I thought that was another really good moment. I think that was probably my second favorite. I think it was just the two moments. It was him and Kara talking were like probably my favorite moments of the episode, honestly, because, and I've said this a ton of times, but the character development is what I like about the show the most, and definitely great. I mean, we even got Winn's last name. We never had his last name before, which I asked my girlfriend, I was like, have they ever said his last name before? And she's like, not that I can think of. So that was just a really funny thing when they said, I was like, huh, that's his last name. And they also say his full name, which I believe it was Winslow, if I remember right. But it was interesting. I was like, oh, I never, I don't know why, but I never think anyone's name is short for anything. I just think, oh, that's their name. But generally names are short for other things. But I don't know any people that have those shortened versions of names, so I never think of that. Like, anyone named Enzo it's short for Lorenzo. I would have never known that. I would have just thought Enzo was their name because I've never heard anyone shorten the L and the O off of Lorenzo, or L, O, and R off of Lorenzo. But people do that, and it's in like two different things that I know of. So when they said his full name, it kind of surprised me. Like, oh, I just thought it was Winn. There are people named Winn all over the planet. But they did a lot of cool stuff with this character. I certainly enjoyed it. Um, his dad was definitely menacing, and I liked the way that they did it. It wasn't the campy version; it was the really dark, evil version. And he makes him like the toy gun and everything that shoots real bullets and stuff, and it was just really cool. That was something, actually. That's a great moment to talk about. That was like one of the. I think the only thing that I didn't like about this episode was how that was resolved. Because my girlfriend mentioned, I was thinking the exact same thing she was, and it was way too easy of a solution when Winn didn't decide to kill the guy and his dad sets off all the bombs, and Kara uses her X-ray vision and stuff, and it's like, okay, you know, there are all the bombs, and they were all just on one side of the convention center, just still piled up. It was like no one bought them or anything like that. There was no mystery or suspense, like, is she going to be able to save this person in time flying super fast, or what's going to happen. It was just like, everyone get to this side because all 10 bombs, like there were 10 freaking bombs in a convention center, and they were all in items that just didn't move, and there was just like, everything's right there. The way she stopped it was pretty cool because she freezes the water and makes a wall of water, which was very awesome. And then that's kind of the second issue, is that even with that, the bombs exploded and blew up a giant wall of ice. That would have killed a ton of people no matter what, because ice is basically just cold glass. Like, that's all that is. If you blow it up like that, it's just shards of glass. So that was another thing. Is like, yeah, they still would have killed a bunch of people. He still would have managed to kill somebody. But it's like, yeah, it was a bit of a. It was far too convenient of a solution, and it was just like, oh crap, there are the 10 bombs, wall of ice, no one hurt, everything's fine. It's like, well, that kind of sucked as a suspenseful moment because everything was in one place, and it wasn't like she had to, fly around and gather them all up and like, try to throw them into one position or something like that. They were already there. It was basically like they cut out that scene or something where she actually had to gather them in one place. It was just like, oh, they're right there, and that was it. So that did kind of suck as a solution because it was just like, well, honestly, there's no suspense to that when she's looking for the bombs and all the bombs are in literally one spot together. They weren't even spread across like different booths or anything. They were all in like one booth, and that was pretty much it. And it was like, well, that does kind of suck. And it was just like, well, all right. So that was like the one disappointing thing out of the episode, was just the way they resolved it was just too simple. It was insanely too convenient, and it was just like, that kind of sucks. And plus, like I said, the wall of ice thing still would have definitely killed a bunch of people because, basically just cold glass, blowing onto people and just hitting people in the face and scratching them up. They would have been really messed up. But it was cool that, like I said, I still love the fact that she made like a wall of ice and stuff. That I personally still think was a really cool move. But I did like, the Toymaker was definitely a great villain. I would personally like to see him come back. I don't know if he'd escape from prison again or whatever, but I think it would be very cool if they brought him back. They probably wouldn't do it this season, but if they brought him back for like a season 2 thing, or even waited and then did it in season 3 or something, I think he'd be really cool to have back because I just loved his character. They did him very dark, very devastating to Winn's mental state. Just him thinking like, saying they're so much alike and everything, and him freaking out like, I was exactly like my father when I was young, and now I'm scared about that part of me because I don't want to be like my father like he is now. So I love that idea. I love bringing that in. I don't think he'll ever just snap and become a villain or anything, but just having his father there to kind of push those buttons is very cool, and it's pretty fun to watch. So hopefully they do bring him back. Certainly enjoyed him as a villain, but that was definitely a great part of this episode. Very well done. We got, like I said, seeing Martian Manhunter, very cool. We also get to see how they're doing his power, because that's something every TV show, every superhero show always does things in their own way, because it's like sometimes you can't have certain characters, and if you have these certain characters, they can't have certain powers, or they can't use them just 100% all the time. And I like that. It makes perfect sense that we get. Admittedly, it's kind of a watered down version of the Martian Manhunter. He still has all the powers he has, or he has. I don't know what has is, but he has all the powers that he does in the comics, and so he can shapeshift into other people. He can read other people's minds. He has the super strength, and we get to see him actually wipe someone's mind. And I love the way they do that, where he's not insanely overpowered. Because honestly, for anyone who doesn't know a lot about Martian Manhunter, he, if he wanted to do that mission, if he had his normal abilities, he could have flown in there in like 2 seconds. He wouldn't have had to walk or anything like that. He would have shapeshifted into somebody else, turned invisible, flown in, and gone through all the walls in like less than a minute, and be like, alright, I'm here, picture, picture, picture. And then he would have just flown out with literally no issues whatsoever. But the way that they did his powers, I thought was very cool. And so he can't really use all his powers all at one time. So after he mind wipes the one guy, he's himself again. He's Hank Henshaw again, because he can't really, that's kind of like his base form. So it's not like he goes back to his original state, but he can't like double shapeshift in a sense. So I thought that was really cool. It's like, okay, that's how they're doing his powers. Also, he couldn't wipe. When he did the mind wipe, he didn't wipe like a little bit of time. He like destroyed that guy's mind, and it kind of messed him up. He was like, I need to be Hank Henshaw, because if I'm Martian Manhunter, and they give a bit of backstory where he's been on Earth for 50 years, in this sense, or he's been on Earth, I guess like 60 years at this point. He mentions he was Martian Manhunter for 50 years, and then that was the cutoff point where he became Hank Henshaw. So he's been that way for like 60, almost 70 years, because I'm sure they're in like their mid-20s and stuff, Alex and Kara. So he's been there almost 70 years, and 50, of those years, he was on the run as the Martian Manhunter. So I like the way that they kind of did his backstory, where he's been on Earth for a very long time, which I thought was interesting. And that also explains how we know Superman. If he's been there for that long, he knows everybody. So I thought that was very cool. It was very interesting how they did his power. I certainly like it. The phase ability I thought was pretty cool, where he kind of turns into like little, like they basically do it where he kind of turns into like the little red balls and phases through stuff. I was like, that's a cool way to do it, because they do like the glowing eyes a lot, and they do, even though his main color is obviously green, they do the red color scheme for his character a lot, which I find very interesting. Like whenever he does his powers and stuff, it's the red eyes. So for this show, that's kind of his signifying thing, is him having red eyes, rather than him being the Martian Manhunter is like this giant green alien. So it's interesting how they do that, and I guess it's because they aren't going to have him as the Martian Manhunter all the time, and maybe they thought green eyes would be a bit too on the nose, so they do the whole red eyes thing. But I certainly enjoyed the way that they did it. I can't wait to see exactly what happens with Maxwell Lord. He has basically half the information he needs, and it shouldn't be insanely difficult to figure out who Hank is, because he's going to be going after them like crazy. And whatever's going to happen in this next episode should be pretty interesting. I don't know if that's going to be another Martian or what, but somebody attacks Hank and like mentions how they're both aliens, or at least she kind of implies that she knows he's an alien. If I'm remembering it right, she may have flat out said like, I know, like, we're both aliens or whatever. But he gets like tossed through a window and everything. So it seems like it's going to be a lot about Hank in this next episode. So I'm really looking forward to it. I certainly enjoyed this episode. It's a really good one for Winn's character. There's also some stuff going on with James and his girlfriend and stuff, and them talking about work and this and that. It was fairly unimportant as far as I'm concerned. Also, Winn does kiss Kara, which I guess that's fairly important. That was, I guess we kind of saw that coming at some point, but he kisses her. Nothing happens. She sees James kissing Lucy, and she still has an issue with that, even though she denies that she has any issue with that. We do find out, though, that James seriously doesn't even remotely give a crap about Kara, relationship-wise, because it was kind of iffy, but even though, he says it in the last episode, too, like, I don't like Kara, but I don't think he realizes how much she actually does like him. So I thought that was kind of interesting, where it's like, oh, this has nothing to do with you not, with you not being around at work and stuff, and it's like, his main issue is that Lucy's kind of getting everything she wants, and he's kind of freaking out, like, he doesn't feel like himself anymore. He doesn't exactly feel happy doing the job that he's doing. And when he said that, I was like, huh, that's very interesting. It has nothing to do with relationship stuff or anything like that, and it kind of shows how none of that is even remotely in his mind. So I just thought it was interesting how much he's like even detached from even remotely considering Kara as like a romantic option. And I'm sure that they won't end up together anyway. They might. Who knows? I don't know how this show's gonna go, but I never thought they would anyway. It's kind of obvious that it'll end up being Winn at some point. It might not be anytime soon, but down the line, I think we all know that's just how it's going to end up playing out. But I certainly enjoyed this episode. Really looking forward to the next one. But of course, I definitely want to know what you guys thought about it. So please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And there's, of course, a lot of different things going on in this episode. But I think the big question has to be, what do you guys expect from Maxwell Lord knowing Kara's secret? Like, he knows Alex's, sisters with Supergirl. He can, like I said, all he has to do is basically Google Alex, and it's like, oh, that's her sister, and he'll know Kara's real name, or, her real name, or human name. I was trying to figure out how to say that right. But he basically has all the information he needs, so I want to know what you guys think is going to come of that. It's obviously going to be bad. I just don't know the specifics and how hard he's going to try to go after them, or even how fast, because now we also have Hank, who has the pictures. They don't talk about it, but he got a picture of the red tornado arm. We still don't know what's going on with the girl either. Outside of the fact that she should basically be melting because it's like sulfuric acid in her bloodstream or something like that, or something close. So that's crazy. But they're basically, they got nothing with that. So I want to know what you guys think is going to come of Maxwell Lord finally figuring out what he's been looking for this basically the entire series. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.